So, welcome to the first English version of our study group, Eternal Vedic Science. Today we will be talking about astrology and Western science. We're going to combine them together and try to explain the depth of Indian philosophy through the point of view of science. We are a study group formed by historians, scientific researchers, physicians, journalists, astrologers, yogis, monks, and our purpose is to decode the Vedic literature and make it accessible to public in the West. Normally, people have difficulty on understanding the most ancient manuscripts of mankind because they are written and understood 5,000 years ago or even more. So we are trying to facilitate the access for this that we could consider the eternal literature as we are going to understand during the class. We will try to create a comprehensive parallel between philosophy and science to bring solid and verified answers about existence and how to achieve a higher level of consciousness and happiness. Okay, so we are going to talk about electromagnetism and life. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Because the first thing that we need to understand is that the way planets communicate with us is through electromagnetism. They have a frequency, like a sound frequency. They are emanating a frequency, and this frequency can alterate our body, our perception of reality, and we are going to prove this scientifically. So in this class we will talk about astrology, as we said already, proving that astrology really interferes with material and human natures. We can state that the cosmos is intelligence if we prove that. Because if there is an interaction in between our life and the movement of the stars, as we are going to see, it's because the stars are able to understand what we are doing. So let's see if it's provable through science. In the picture we're seeing a representation of the magnetic field of Jupiter, the electromagnetic field of Jupiter. As we're going to see, it's 14 times bigger than the magnetic field of the Earth. And if you can understand that Earth acts and is responsible for reactions on your own body, if you can understand that Earth is interacting with you, what to say about something that is 14 times more powerful than the energy of the Earth? We will start with a quote from an Indian sacred text. In the same way, common men are tied by the commands of the stars, I am tied by the desire of my pure devotee, says the personification of absolute intelligence in the Vishnu Purana. The personification of infinite intelligence is talking about two different constrictions. The constriction of common man under the influence of the stars, and the constriction of God towards those who reach perfection. Usually, when we study Vedic literature, we focus on the second part of the mantra. But as we know, all the Vedic mantras are important since the beginning. So we're always thinking about the fact that if we attain devotion, if we attain knowledge, we can get closer to God, right? But God is also saying that common men, those who are not achieving this process, are being totally controlled and enslaved by the desire of the stars. And now the quote of Max Planck, a Nobel Prize of Physics in 1944. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force that makes the particles of an atom vibrate and maintains the atom's solar system. We must assume that this power that lies in existence comes from a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the source of all matter. So, one thing that you should ask yourself about your comprehension of Vedic literature is this. when the Vedas talk about the personality of the infinite, some people say, oh no, this cannot exist. But if Western scientists talk about a mind that is the source of matter, we think he's very intelligent and brilliant, right? Millions doubt or even mock astrology. But have you ever met anyone who didn't know their own sign? Does astrology really work? If it works, how does it work? Most newspapers print a horoscope section, and many readers who claim they don't believe in astrology read it anyway every day. A Western psychologist named Carl Jung used to say there is an emotional interest in the matter of astrology. And for that reason, astrology must be considered and analyzed. It's an epistemologic problem, fact. If humankind believe in something, if it's real or if it's not real, this is a matter that concerns philosophers and psychologists and those who pay attention in human behavior. According to Jung, astrology is assured of recognition from psychology without further restrictions, because astrology represents the summation of all the psychological knowledge of antiquity. So when Jung came across to a difficult psychological case, he would rely on astrology as a resource, because astrology helps predict behavior. His method was based on the understanding that the year and the season in which one is born adds a particular flavor to their character and personality. So what the Vedic astrology says sometimes that time has flavor. For example, this spring, the last spring, or this autumn that we are living now is totally different from another autumn that you lived before. So every Monday is different from the other Monday because of the flavor created by the electromagnetism of the stars. And we are going to see how it happens. I'm going to introduce myself for those who never saw me before. I don't like introducing myself from a resume point of view, because I don't believe that that the value of a person corresponds to which books the person read, or which studies the person did, or which work the person was paid for. But I think that, as the Vedas say, that we can measure people according to their ethical level, to their conscience. But anyway, for those who need to understand what are my bases, I graduated in cultural studies and comparative literature from La Sapienza in Italy. My dissertation was on aesthetics philosophy and explored the nature of art masterpieces and human culture. I also studied narrative theory and cinema, and worked at an Italian TV station called RAI. I wrote and directed theater plays in Florence and Rome, and worked as editor for literature journals. My work has been published in Italian and Brazilian newspapers. I taught at schools, university and institutions such as the Indian Cultural Center of São Paulo, which belongs to the embassy, the Museum of Art of São Paulo, and the Cultural Center of Brazil State Bank. And I spent my whole life trying to make the puzzle fit. Even after the university, after studying all the literatures were available at the university, I couldn't make the puzzle fit. I was struggling and trying to understand, what does Egypt has to do with India? What does Greece has actually to do with nowadays? What really happened until now? And it was only when I started studying the Puranas that I could see the whole picture. The Vedic literature, the literature of ancient India, will reveal anyone with good heart and sincerity the whole history of mankind and the history of man, philosophy and thoughts. You please forgive my English. It's not even my second language, so I make mistakes all the time. So how can we define astrology and how can we understand astrology? It's a science that analyzes the influence of the stars on nature. And not many people know that, but it first appeared in India not in Egypt or in Mesopotamia. Inside the world's first complete philosophical manuscripts, we talked about them already a little, the Vedas. It's considered a field of the original literature, a Vedanga, like one of the arms of Vedic culture. This study became famous in Western world due to the use by Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Greek, and Romans too. Okay, and we know that in historical societies, knowing the sky and the position of the stars was something very important, especially in navigation. The sky was used to explain where people were. No? They were like sailing in the ocean, so only looking to the stars they could understand more or less where were they going. In agriculture, this knowledge helped farmers anticipate annual changes to determine the proper times to plant a specific crop, for example. So we are going to understand something very important now. So what happens in the sky? Celestial bodies, the planets, move through the cosmos in different velocities. So, and they are crossing fixed constellations. So we have two structures going on. You have the fixed stars, and you have the rotation of the planets. And the relation between these lunar houses, the planets, and our life is going to be explained in this lecture. Okay, constellations are immovable in relation to the Earth. A constellation is a set of stars organized in geometrical shape. We call this, it's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to make things a little bit easy. Those who have already astrological knowledge will notice that I'm jumping some parts, but it's necessary for people to overview the whole thing. So a constellation is a set of stars organized in geometrical shape, and we call them signs. These symbols have specific qualities. In the West, there's something very strange going on. People think that these qualities are cultural and that man invents a character for the constellations. In reality, what we are going to prove is that nature and not man create archetypes. And I'm going to explain you this in the next image. So, some other people have hard time grasping the existence of intelligence beyond man. But we can make an exercise in philosophic logic to prove this concept wrong. Okay? So let's follow this. For man to understand archetypes, he has to manipulate language. Language is commonly believed to be a product of mankind's intellect. But according to logic and according to the laws of chemistry, man is intelligent, okay? And man is created by nature. So nature must also be intelligent. Otherwise, it could not produce intelligence in man if it didn't first possess the basic elements to manifest such phenomenon in itself. Like if you are in a lab and you want to produce water, if you don't have hydrogen and oxygen, how could you produce water? You see, so the basic elements for intelligence are already contained in nature. Forcibly. So nature is created by Earth. So Earth is also able to manifest intelligence. Nobody could deny this. And therefore, the cosmos contain intelligence. And the cosmos contain language, mathematics, physics, all the skills that mankind have. Because man is a product of the cosmos. Right? It's a succession, a logic succession. So culture comes from language. Language comes from man. Man comes from nature. Nature comes from earth. Earth comes from the universe. And the universe comes from the infinite. So who is the owner, according to the Vedic science, to the Vedic manuscripts, of culture and all languages? The infinite. The infinite is able to speak Japanese, Sanskrit, Bengali, Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, the language of the birds, and the language of the stars. Let's go back to the Vedas for a moment. According to the Puranas, Dhruvaloka, the polar star, is in the center of our galactical level. But some imagine these manuscripts to be mythology. Let's read one of the mantras, one of the verses. To achieve the polar star is very difficult, but by your austerity and spiritual practices you have conquered it. Simply to see and adore such an abode, Lord Vishnu's place, the sun and moon and all the other planets, stars, lunar mansions and solar systems circumambulate that supreme place clockwise. So look how deep this mantra is going. It's also saying that the universe is a huge clock, manifesting time and space, which we will see maybe in the next class is the way through which the infinite distribute knowledge. He organized the distribution of knowledge through time and space. But this is a little bit too much for this class. So what we need to understand here is that we have a declaration put by written more than 5,000 years ago, where they didn't have cameras to prove anything. The Puranas describe a rotating star chandelier. Today, unfortunately, even Indians think that Vedic knowledge is the magical interpretation of reality made by primitive man. Not all Indians, but some of them. However, the Vedic mantras declare themselves eternal. And they also say that humility, sincerity, and dedication are required to realize their deep meanings. And so here we're going to say, someone could say, okay, but you're saying that the sun and the moon rotate around the polar star. And it's not possible, isn't it? Probably you have heard the name of these three scientists. Copernicus already used to say or suggest in his work that nature, the nature of reality, would depend on the position of the observer. He was the first one in the West, of course, to start talking about this. Galileo thought this to be true and developed the ideas of relative motion. Einstein saw reality wanted to see reality from an absolute point of view. But even Einstein said that if we calculate cosmic motion from Earth, we have to conceive Earth as a fixed reality in order to calculate what's going on. You can calculate the velocity of a car from outside the car and from inside the car. So what Einstein was going, he said, okay, everything is moving and everything is relative. But in order to understand things, you have to fix some points and look to reality from that point of view and calculate what you see and try to make it match with the total relativity of all the other theories and all the other movements put together. Okay, so what do we see from Earth? Ladies and gentlemen, we see stars revolving around the polar star, Dhruvaloka, exactly as is it described in the Puranas. When I was studying movie theory and movie practicing at the university, we used to make an analogic picture of the sky during the night. Those who had those old cameras before the digital cameras that we have today, you could only point that camera, open the diaphragm of the lenses to the sky, leave it there for hours, and you would get this picture. You would see the polar star, Dhruvaloka, right in the middle of a rotating chandelier of stars, exactly the way it is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranic book of devotion, the devotion to the infinite. Okay? So if we photograph the trails of the stars for 2 hours approximately, we can easily prove the scientific perfection of Vedic literature. And when I started studying the Puranas, I started using science to prove the Puranas. After 8 years, I do the opposite. I use the Puranas as my fixed point to see and to control if some scientific theory today is real or not. Okay, another example of the hidden Vedic perfection. Someone could raise their hands and say, okay, wait a minute. The Vedas say that planets are lotus flowers. How could we believe that a planet is a flower? Right? It's all mythology, really. This picture is the rotating pattern of Venus on the sky over the Earth. It makes this drawing right here. So what does it mean? It means that if today Venus is at this point, tomorrow it's going to be at this other point, and through the days it's going to turn in the sky in a way that will compose a flower. So if you take the illusion of time, space and matter out, you would see Venus as a path, as an orbit, the path of the orbit of that planet, just the way probably from Dhruvaloka, the highest star of the material universe, time is seen. Those who are studying Vedic literature for more time probably heard this statement. When in the Vishnu Purana, Lakshmi Devi asks Lord Vishnu, she says, what is it going to happen to Dhruva? And he says, I don't know, my dear, only Lord Brahma knows the future. It's not that he couldn't know, it's that from the polar star, you don't have that point of view, but from Brahmaloka, you see time divided like this. All the manifestations of time and dimensions are open from that highest point of view inside the universe. But we're going to talk about that better in the future. So, to understand the expression lotus flower, or any other description inside Vedic literature, we need to be humble. If we defy the manuscripts, you say, oh, this is not true, I cannot believe this. This is mythology. You know, they say it's true, but it's not. The Big Bang is true. That's what people think. They adore the books sometimes, if they reach this level. But they do really believe in science, or better, the science they see in television. I have to tell you, surprise, surprise, that in television, that the thing that goes on the documentaries it's not science. That's a TV program. I know because I used to write them. Okay? Anyway, we need meditation and sincerity to achieve realization of the meanings of Vedic literature. And the Srimad Bhagavatam always says that all the mantras inside the Srimad Bhagavatam and in all the Vedic literature are literal. They are not metaphorical. They are not like an allegory of something else. They are really saying things the way they are. Okay, let's go back to signs and archetypes. So, we said that the infinite is the owner of Japanese, Portuguese, of existence in total. Of the building that you live in, of the clothes you're wearing. Who's the owner of the atoms composing your body, composing your clothes? Where do they come from? If they come from the cosmos and the cosmos come from the infinite is the owner of everything you have, right? It's logical. Okay, so forms, substance, and archetypical signs belong to existence, belong to reality, belongs to the universe, belong to the infinite, right? So we know that signs represent archetypes, such as animals. But what does a living animal represent? Can you understand a living animal in front of you? When you look to an animal, you say, okay, that is the dog, that is the cat, that is the lion. Can you understand the essence of the lion? What the lion is to nature? What does nature understand about the lion? Can you reach that level? Okay, animals are not the end of the line. We have to understand also this. This is very important. In our study group, we call it the loopings of the infinite. The animal is not the end of the line. He's just like a manifested portion of the repertoire of eternal existence. He's like a box, a bull. The sign of Taurus corresponds to the bull. Okay, so the bull represents strength, determination, a strong contact with the earth, right? These qualities are also present in men. Don't you know people who are like this? Very determined, very strong, and very planted on earth. So these qualities belong to animals, man, and nature. And the animal envelopes these qualities and gives us this manifested portion of what nature can create. You see? But within that animal, his qualities are also present in other things, as we just said. So it's not that you can say, okay, those stars look like a bull, so I'm going to say that that's a Taurus sign, and I'm going to invent that man has that qualities. Because it's not like that, as we're going to see in the next images. Okay, a sign represents human characteristics. A constellation represents an animal, maybe. The animal, in turn, has qualities and defects in a concrete form that are present in them as well as in man and in nature. So he's not the end of the line. Can you understand this point? He's just unboxing qualities in a particular way, in an existential way. Okay, of course, newspaper horoscopes are generic. Okay, I never pretend with this class, I never intend for you to go every day and live by the orders of the newspaper horoscope. That's not my intention. Mostly because the newspaper horoscope is based only on the position of the sun. But there are hundreds of factors to be considered. If only the position of the sun was to be analyzed, there would be only 12 types of people, all of them experiencing the same situations. But it's not like that, as you understand. All the other planets and their different positions have to be also calculated and taken in consideration. So let's just check the fact that people believe in what they speak, right? The language, the way someone expresses his day-by-day conversations reveal his level of conscience. The Vaishnavas say that you can only understand the level of conscience of someone not by the dress, not by the title, not by the temple, not by material factors, only by the way he speaks. Okay, so when people speak, they talk about martial arts, referring to Mars. Venereal diseases, referring to Venus. Lunatic personalities, referring to Luna, which is moon in Latin. In Italy, the adjective solar means happy and smiley. And so many times we hear people saying, oh, you know, this was written on the stars. So it's already inside our language that reveals our deep thoughts, our deep level of conscience. Okay. Can you tell me what is the sun? Probably all of us studied the sun in school, right? For me, at this point of my studying journey, I find very surprising that Westerns think that primitive man used to look at the sun and see a deity because they ignored the modern truth. What science explains. The sun is a ball of atoms exploding to make us the favor of pointing a light torch in our direction during the day. That's what science explains. There are a fusion of atoms inside the sun, in between oxygen, hydrogen, and helium. They're producing helium inside the sun. And this is it. And people put this explanation under the arm and go to work every day. But they never look to the beauty of the sun. The sun is so beautiful that you cannot even stare at it. Right? It's so gorgeous and so beautiful that it hurts your eyes. So it's not merely a lamp and not an external object hanging in the sky. The first manuscripts of mankind explain that the sun is a symbol of divine consciousness and that it manifests an evident level of beauty and divinity, which, yes, does nurture us and illuminate us in various manners. The Puranas say that we only are able to see reality because we are inside the level of vision of the sun. Is it possible? If I ask you this question, is the sun dead or alive? You have to pick one of these. What would you say? Only a fool would say that the sun is dead. There are people who said it. In some classes of our study group, people say, I think it's dead. Well, factually, it's not, because dead stars behave in different ways. But if you could give like your human answer to the sun, you would clearly see that he's shining, he's living, he's producing, he's feeding, right? So how could he be dead? Of course, the platform of the sun, the level of life of the sun is totally different from ours. But who told you the level of conscience or life of the sun is inferior to yours? If you study psychology, you learn that you can measure the level of consciousness of someone through the level of responsibility that that person has in day-by-day life. Could you tell me how big is the responsibility of the sun? He is feeding 8 billion human beings and trillions of other animals, countless vegetables, plants, trees and forests, innumerable, even more insects, and not to talk about atomic particles. He's giving energy to an infinite number of particles, beings, things, we would say philosophically. Right? So, if you understand also another thing, that everything that is alive has a level of conscience. The cat reacts if you try to kill him, right? Even the mosquito does, the way Sham Das Babaji Maharaj says. The mosquito tries to run from you. So he understands that he is alive and he wants to protect something, right? Do you think the sun doesn't have a conscious level? That he's not aware of what he's doing. You are aware. You know everything that you're doing. But the sun, oh my God, he's just a lamp. He's right there. No? And for example, try to understand one thing. What is the beautiful sensation that you have when you look at the sun in the morning? If not, what is the pleasant sensation? People say, when I wake up in the morning and the sun is there, I'm happy, right? And if I wake up in the morning and it's raining, I'm sad. What does it mean? Why are you happy when the sun is shining, and why are you sad when the sun is not there? The beauty of the day that you see when you open your window in the morning, and the sun is there and the sky is clear, is a blessing. That's why you feel happy. That's why you feel happy. The heat of the sun on your face gives you a pleasure, right? That's also a blessing. A direct blessing of the sun, which he gives us through his mantras, but we're not going to talk about that now. His emanating sound, as we're going to see very soon. So he could also be described as a gigantic distributor of energy. the sun, Surya Dev. And this is the name of the sun in Sanskrit, the first philosophical language of mankind. People say, oh no, that was this, it was that. This is the first language who manifested a complete philosophy and literature that contains all kinds of sciences. There is no discussion in the importance of Sanskrit in man history. No other language has philosophy, spirituality and science combined all together in a perfect way as Indian culture written in Sanskrit, originally in Sanskrit. Okay? And please do not believe in the Aryan invasion. I'm saying this for those who are already researching online about Vedic culture because it's not factual. But we're not going to explain that in this class. Okay, the sun is a gigantic distributor of energy and his name is Surya, not Helios. The other languages that appear after in time also suffers the effect of entropy. But I'm also not going to go into that now because we wouldn't have time. Okay, here's a vital gas pump from which food, agriculture, economy, industry, politics and everyone's lives depend directly. No sun, no food, no money. So your bank account is connected to Surya Dev. Is he important? And crazy Western scientists tend to say, oh, you know, he's smaller than that other sun. Our sun is not in competition with anyone. To be clear. And there is a big difference between sun and stars. Our sun is special, but we're not going to talk about this in this class. So our life depends on the sun. Could you call him a demigod or not? Why demigod? Well, he's not the whole. He's just a piece of the universe, right? And he's working for the universe. He's working, if you call it universe, supreme intelligence, absolute God. In the Vedic literature, they call it Krishna, the supreme controller, the center of transcendental, of non-material intelligence. Okay, so the sun is part of this project, is part of creation, so he's a demigod, he's not a whole god. Okay, of course there are more to say about this. We're not saying that the personification of the sun corresponds to the actual sun disk. We are just talking in synthesis for new people to understand Vedic knowledge. Okay, the universe. So, if the universe has a meaning, if our life has meaning, the universe is an ethical entity. Contemporary men repeat that there is no difference between good and evil. Nowadays, maybe you heard people saying that. In India, people don't dare that much, fortunately. But in the West, people say it in every corner. There is no difference between good and evil. There is no right or wrong. How many times did people who lived in the West hear this? So if there is no difference between good and evil and someone comes inside this room and kills us all, no difference. He can do that, right? He can even kill babies, couldn't he? There's no difference. Actions has no meaning. There is no right or wrong, people say. If there is positive and negative, necessarily there is right or wrong. And we have to understand that, for example, even animals can differentiate positive from negative. If you're going to beat a dog or caress him, he would react completely different to you, right? So, is it cultural? The dog doesn't want to be beaten because he's culturally absorbing your mind? Oh, so mind exists and it's so powerful that cross-material difference, right? Your body and the body of the dog. So if you do believe that your mind influenced the dog, you believe in Vedic knowledge, because mind is firstly explained in the Vedas, not by Sigmund Freud or Carl Gustav Jung. Okay? So animals recognize sweetness. So sweetness is factual, belongs to nature. So the universe recognizes sweetness and aggressivity. So the universe is ethical. He understands the value of good and evil. And that's why we're here, according to the Vedic knowledge. We're here to learn to differentiate what is bad and what is good. And inside good, what is perfect, what is even more perfect, when what is absolute. This is the process that we are trying to do inside studying Vaishnava philosophy, right? Trying to go further in goodness. Very good. The theatre of the absolute is an expression of Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. He says that the Supreme Intelligence is staging plays. What is your life? It's a theatre play that will teach you some things that you didn't learn on the past life. We're not going to talk about reincarnation from a scientific point of view today, but we will do it in the next occasion. Anyway, people think everything is cultural. We feel good in a beautiful, clean place because it's cultural. If you are in a gorgeous garden, in a beautiful house, everything is clean and perfect and perfumed, full of flowers, it's cultural. It's nice because it's cultural. And if you go to a filthy place, dirty place, full of cockroaches, and you get a disease, the bacteria of disease is also cultural then, right? Come on. Are you sure there is no difference between good and evil? Are bacteria also cultural? The universe is staging life, and life has meanings, and these meanings have patterns. And we are here to understand where do these patterns come from through the study of astrology today. So, a first thing that we have to understand that space is not always the same. There are different stars over there. And they are vibrating, emanating different electromagnetism impulses that derive from their chemical composition. You understand that? So when planets turn, for example, some of you are inside that room, some of you are sitting on the sofa, some of you are sitting on a cushion on the floor, some of you are over there, and I thank you all for your presence. It's very important for me that you're here. It's the first time that I'm presenting this to people who are already studying Vedic culture, and it's a big honor for me to discuss this with you. Okay, some of you are more comfortable than other people, right? Some of you are not feeling any pain or any disturbance, not feeling cold floor or anything. Some of you are feeling the floor is a little bit cold, the cushion could be a little bit bigger, there's no point for me to put my back now. Right? The same happens with the stars. In some places, the chemistry around them are aggressive, uncomfortable. So that's what makes the changes that we are going to analyze soon. So their position produces a favorable or an unfavorable habitat, ambient, for planets that are orbiting our system. Okay. Jyotish, a language to decode galaxies. So Jyotish is the name of astrology in Sanskrit, in Vedic culture. Curiously, the same science that denies astrology, the same Western science that denies astrology, investigates and confirms the influence of electromagnetic radiation or electromagnetic fields of the celestial bodies on the organisms. Reality in between the Indian original culture would be like the source of Oriental culture, and Western culture is suffering by a kind of what's the name of that sickness that people get splitted into two personalities? Schizophrenia. The world, the mind of the world now is schizophrenic. They cannot put two things together. And they cannot realize that philosophy, science, and spirituality are in a line. There is no difference. You can walk inside this corridor and reach the proper conclusions if, we said it before, you are humble, sincere, and devoted. The three most important words in our dictionary. Okay, so what is the sun doing? We said it before. What are the rays of the sun? It's electromagnetic emanation. That's what science says. What does it mean? That the light of the sun is sound. What is electromagnetic emanation? A vibration in the smallest level, in the deepest level. that can be only parallel to sound. Okay, so the sunshine is nothing but sound. The sun is blessing, pronouncing prayers a devotee, an elevated devotee would realize. His mantras are emanating his blessings, and we are feeling hot, heat. Plants are growing. He's allowing plants to grow. Why do we need plants to eat? Because we don't do photosynthesis, right? Okay, another planet is Jupiter, and we already said that his magnetic field is 14 times larger than that of the Earth. He's the most powerful of all planets, and he's considered to be the guru. He is the planet who is emanating intelligence, poetry, knowledge, good humor, most of the time also wealth. And you're going to understand how. Okay, let's get to the point. When a child is born, we have the blessing of having present with us a caring mother, which is also not only a caring mother, but the wife of a god brother and a friend. Anyway, when the child is born, what is going to happen in that moment? The baby will receive an energy charge from the earth, of course, and from the other celestial masses around it. So if a planet is emanating sound, emanating electromagnetism, he's like an antenna, right? So what happens if you plug a radio, perfectly built radio, into the current, electrical current? It will start to transmit the programs that are being sent by the antennas around him, right? The same thing will happen to the baby. And the position of the planets around that baby will determine the way he's going to absorb energy from the cosmos. How? So imagine that in the center of this room, how many we are? Like there's 20 people here probably. Okay, in the middle of this room, someone takes birth. Or something happens, a flower bursts from the floor. Okay? And we all are going to look at her at that moment. And some of us, those who are comfortably seated, will say, oh nice, a flower. Those who are seated behind the flower can say, okay, I cannot see the projection on the wall of the class now because of the petals of the flower. So some of us are going to bless the flower, and some others are going to curse the flowers, are going to think negatively towards that flower. Okay, that's what happens with the planets. They are comfortable or uncomfortable. So they're going to emanate different electromagnetic fields. And these fields will hit the subtle body of the child in the moment of birth, exactly in the moment when the air comes in. That's when you break the lock, like tack. The life started. Okay? And in that moment, of course, there is also the moment of conception. I'm jumping a little bit because it would be endless if we talk about every step of our life in astrology. But there is also the moment of the birth. So in that moment, there will be some stars coming in the horizon. The famous ascendant. They're coming up on the horizon, and they're going to be shooting electromagnetic fields to the body of that child. Another planet will be on the midheaven, the top of the sky, and he's going to be shooting another energy. You get the point? And this will format what? The chakras. So if a planet is in a bad position behind a column, the energy that will be coming from that planet will be minute, not strong enough to give his blessings to that child. So that person will not be able to think about technology, for example, in my case. Because the mind which is provided to that baby has no good measure of technology. You get the point? So we say, when we study Vedic culture, we say that all the qualities belongs to the Absolute, belongs to Krishna, right? But what does it mean? It means that they're being emanated and we're getting a portion of it. According to what? To our karma. Who determines what? Everything. The person, the body of the mother, the moment where the mother is going to become pregnant, the moment of birth, everything is calculated. But this is difficult to understand now. Let's get into detailing this moment. So this imprinting of stellar frequencies formats the subtle body's energy channels that emanates karma. So I'm going to explain you what does it happen. For example, if someone has the mother in the position of enemies in their chart, what will happen to that baby? It's a good example. That baby will receive an energy that will say, you are always going to have problems with your mother and also with mother figures. So it doesn't matter what that children do, that boy or girl do, the mother will be always responding negatively because she's going to receive a command from the stars that cross the chakras of the children, goes to the mother, and the mothers get irritated every time. She says, I don't know what he does, but he drives me crazy. And the children will think, oh my God, I'm such a victim because I don't do anything. And she's always angry with me, right? And what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? When you start complaining, you become responsible for your experience and you understand that everything is emanating from your chakras. You stop believing the theater of illusion. So if you change the mother, you take that mother out and put another one in her life, the second one will behave almost the same. But whose fault is it? No, it's my father's fault because he already married to crazy women, right? No, it's yours because she's different to other people, isn't she? So, karma is real and it's our responsibility. For every aspect of reality, to have music gifts, anything. So, and this will establish the relationship between these 3 points, the human being, the individual, the cosmos, and life because of the interaction with other people. Okay, this is a study by Jackie Johnson talking about the effect of the moon, the influence of the moon on the growth of plants. The culture says that the moon emanates soma, and the soma is what makes plants grow. That's why we go to the garden next morning and we see the flower. You don't see the flower in the evening, in the late evening. You see the flower in the morning, right? This is written in the Vedas and it's proven by this research. Okay, we already said that time is not always the same. There is a flavor inside time. Okay, so maintaining a garden or a sugarcane crop involves constructive and destructive powers. It's a game of polarities. That's why we talked about blessings and curses. Some people get scared. They say, oh my God, I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in anything negative. Really, have you ever seen negative things happen to you in your life? Or to other people? Or to mankind? You know? What does it mean? We're going to study that, to see that here. That the universe, the Absolute, Krishna, God, and the Supreme Intelligence uses 2 things to teach us. Pleasure and pain. And we need these polarities in order to grow, like a crop. Right? Nature has cycles. The 4 seasons depend on the relationship between Earth and the Sun. Again. But what other proofs do we have? Not only the plants of a garden, agriculture, the menstrual cycle, the tides, the powerful Ekadasi fasting, we're going to be talking about this in another class, scientifically, the seasons of the year, but also some very interesting scientific experiments like this one. This French psychologist and statistician called Michel Gauquelin was hired by the Observatoire de Paris to expose the astrology's hoax. They wanted him to prove that astrology was a farce. It was not true. He was asked to search and find flaws in horoscopes, but he ended up proving the overwhelming influence of Mars on the life of 20,000 famous sports people. This experiment was called the Mars effect. This experiment proved the action of the orbiting planets in human life, statistically, and I'm going to show you the numbers. Okay, so Gauquelin proved that in the astrologic chart of physicians, of doctors, Mars and Saturn were positioned next to the horizon or in mid-heaven. So the two main points of our chart, the horizon and the top of the sky, represent the basic energies that we're going to get on the moment of our birth. Who is there, and these 2 points, is going to determine our talents, our role in life. And in the case of athletes, Mars was alone in the same position. So it's interesting because Saturn is research, knowledge, study, gravity, negativity. So if you have this with health, which is Mars, power, you're going to study health, right? If you have health alone, you're going to be a strong boy. Astrology is 96% accurate according to Michel Gauquelin. And it's not like a normal number. If you have 96%, it means that it's 1 in a million would be wrong. According to astrology, there is a solid statistical relationship between the birth of important people and their success. This is Gauquelin speaking. I have collected 20,000 dates of birth and I have reached the inevitable conclusion that the position of planets at birth is connected to destiny. So this is the graphic of the Mars effect. The circle represents the distribution of the houses in the chart. The dotted line is the position of Mars in the map of 717 sports people who have not reached success. So Mars was distributed randomly on their charts. Okay? The solid line, the one with the 2 peaks, in houses 1 and in house 10, is found in the chart of 2088 great champions. So when I say to my friends, I say, some people say to me, I'm going to do this. I say, why don't you check your chart? Yeah, maybe something is good anyway. But checking the chart with the perfect astrologist is very important so you know who you are. What cards do you have in your pocket? How can you play your role in life? Yes, there are things that go further astrology. And those who are studying for a long time, we are going to talk about that at the end of the class. But to go further, we need to understand what we are going to leave behind. We need to understand what is going on to really leave something behind. So house 1 is the ascendant and house 10 is midheaven. The probability of this happening randomly is 1 in a million, as we said. Gauquelin proves statistically that an individual profession is connected to the planets that occupy these 2 houses in the chart. The chart of artists, look at this, is almost opposite in relation to the chart of scientists. The position of Saturn is opposite in these 2 different kinds of people. The planet Saturn is the planet of discipline, seriousness, lonely research and introspection. So when it's weak, and you have other blessings to become creative, you're going to be an artist. If it's too strong, you're going to be a scientist. Another interesting experiment that he presented is result that scientists have strong Saturn, the planet of research, and weak Jupiter, the planet of philosophy and spirituality. So this explained the intense materialism and the activist atheism of contemporary science. They don't have a spiritual mind. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend so much time considering only matter. They're programmed to be scientists. In 1966, the same Gauquelin published a book entitled L'Hérédité Planétaire, where he demonstrated statistically, I hope my French is not that bad, he demonstrated statistically that when the father and the mother have planets in the same position, the child born of natural delivery tends to be born at a time with the same planetary position as the parents. So probably, as when the father and the mother have talents for music, the children will take birth in a moment that he will be blessed with the same thing. So this is the way blessings are transmitted. Not only DNA works. Also, the synastry in between parents will create the symptony. No? Synastry is like the fact that the two charts are going well together. Will create a descending of blessings. That's why happy families have the same career. They're all musicians, they're all mathematicians, right? Because they married well. That's what happened. So, planets in our body. The sun rules the bones, the moon rules the blood, Mars is connected to marrow inside our spine, and muscle tissues. Jupiter with fat, Venus with semen and the ovule, Saturn with the nervous tissue, Mercury rules our skin. But how? We're going to go further now. We're going to go inside the body for you to see how it happens. Okay, this is necessary before. This is a study made by Nick Colostrom called Celestial Influence, the Metal-Planet Relationship. Practically, Colostrom is a Dutch physician, a researcher for the London Medical Hospital, that demonstrated that the result of certain chemical reactions between metals change when carried out under determinate planetary conjunctions. What does it mean? It means that he made experiments with silver sulfate, for example, in the moment that the moon was influencing reality, and the result was different compared to when the moon was not influencing reality. We're going to understand this. So he observed and proved that planets influence and change the chemical reactions were exactly those traditionally related to the metals used in the experiments according to Vedic astrological texts. It's not only that planets influence metal, but they influence the metals described in the Vedas. So, Saturn, whose respective metal is lead, changed the reactions with lead sulfate and was indifferent for other metals. The Moon, whose metal is silver, just interfered with silver nitrate. Venus only changed copper sulfate, since its metal is copper. And Mars, which rules iron, influenced the reactions with iron sulfate. So, what is happening? The planet has a chemical composition, who has an electromagnetic field, who has also color. I'm not going to go into color right now, but also the color of, for example, the stones that people carry on their bodies, right? To correct the effect of the planets. They are capturing that specific electromagnetic field and creating a new antenna for the body, for you to drink the blessing that you couldn't drink without this new window. So this is a parabolic antenna, not a ring. Of course, It has to be perfectly studied, the carat, the purity of the stone. It's not just like people go in New Age books and try to find out and hang something in the neck that it's supposedly helping, but it's not. For example, if a stone has impurity inside, it can reverse the effect and you can get less blessings. And so we have to be careful. Knowledge requires attention and effort, like everything else. This other scientist, Cleve Baxter, proved emotions affect DNA. Radioactivity experiments have proved that the DNA extracted from the body of a patient responds to stimuli even at a distance of over 700 kilometers. What does it mean? He took pieces of skin and blood out of some people and started moving with this to other labs. He was controlling the piece of cell, the cells removed, and the body of the person. He used to show movies, sad movies or happy movies to the person sitting in the first lab. And according to the emotion that the person was getting from the movie, the DNA was responding in the same way, even to the distance of 700 kilometers. So how does this thing happen with planets? It's very simple. It's Wi-Fi. In the same way that I'm changing the images of this lecture, God and the universe can transmit to your body commands and energy through Wi-Fi system. If DNA responds in a distance of 700 kilometers, you think you wouldn't respond to electromagnetism 14 times bigger than the Earth, like the one that Jupiter has? As we showed you in the beginning of the class. Okay, in the West, the definition of the word planet was decided by vote, ladies and gentlemen. Recently, in 2006, the International Astronomical Union deliberated before determining a final resolution defining the concept of planet. This action has been praised and criticized and continues to be discussed among scientists today. So what does it mean? That they had to say, what do you think is a planet? And they started saying, and they started writing down, and they voted for the final definition. Do you think that, sorry for the Westerns, I also was born in the West. Okay, I'm not against myself or anyone else who was born in the West, but I'm just saying there are some things that we simply don't even know how to define. How could we know, how could we describe the way they work if we don't even understand the words? Okay, the Vedas, as we said, are the source of all the science. And this is a brief proof of that, because I'm declaring it, but I'm not saying nothing about it. We can see this in another time, but for example, the speed of light is mentioned in the Rig Veda. On the first chapter, 50th verse, it says, with astonishing velocity, thy shine reaches this kingdom, O sun. So it's already saying, more than 5,000 years ago, actually it's way more than 5,000 years ago, because the Vedic tradition, before putting by written, was already spoken knowledge, repeated to children from the Guru. The Guru used to repeat. Like we used to learn the stupid music. Well, I learned stupid music, for example, explaining how potatoes used to grow in a funny way in Brazil, like batatinha quando nasce, right? And I know it until today. It's not even the actual growth. It's something silly, just rhyming words. And when you are a kid, if you listen to poems, to rhyming words, you can memorize them and keep them forever. So what they used to do before the actual Puranas, they used to chant, to sing with children. Children used to memorize everything, and they used to go, okay, now I need yoga. Which is the songs for yoga, the mantras for yoga? And they used to repeat, which are the mantras for health or Ayurveda or music. So you would have it here. The guru today was substituted by the gugu, right? It's the same word also. You get the point? Now we don't have memory anymore, so we need an external hard disk. So also the Rig Veda talks about the elliptical orbit of planets. They're saying the planets are elliptical. The Srimad Bhagavatam explained the theory of relativity in the Brahma Vimohan Leela. If Lord Brahma, I'm going to talk now for those who already know a little bit of Vedic texts. If Brahma takes 6 months to move from the first start of reality and reaches here, and this is, for him, it's just an instant, it's described, that the intelligence responsible for the first star, called in the Vedas by Brahma, by the name of Brahma, moves inside the cosmos in an instant for him. But for us, that instant corresponds to 6 months. Right? So you already have the different velocity of time inside one of the first human literature, one of the first Vedic texts that exist, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not the first, but anyway, compared to Western literature, it is the first because it's the most important also. Well, anyway, so the planets beyond Saturn are mentioned in the Mahabharata. So you say, okay, the Vedic, they don't talk about Pluto and Neptune, but they already mentioned there. They knew them, okay? Which also talks about nuclear energy. The Mahabharata talks about nuclear energy, about aerial engineering, electricity, holograms. They fight against holograms in the Mahabharata war. You say it's impossible. Wait until you see the class called The True Origin of Culture, because we're going to prove that also. So robotics and plastic surgery are also mentioned in one of the most important itihasas, maybe the most important itihasas for our times, the Mahabharata. Okay, the Vedas know how to call the planets and how to define planets. They use the Sanskrit word graha, which in Bengali would be pronounced groha, right? Yes. Graha is that which secures, imprisons, limits, restricts, and also that which supports, holds, withstands, that which blesses and distributes karma. This is a planet. We are imprisoned by our reality. Can you go out? How far can you go? We are limited by space. The floor is supporting us, literally. People say that the infinite, that Krishna has all the strength, right? But you can calculate it. If you multiply the weak force per the strong force of the universe, per the number of atoms of the universe, per the number of universes that are around us, 10 to the potency of 60, you would have the value of something that is equal or below the supreme intelligence power. I'm not going to make the calculation with you now, but we can measure. You can even count how many teeth humankind will need from the beginning of civilization to the end. There are numbers for everything inside the Vedic culture, and they are astonishingly perfect. But we are not talking about this right now. Okay, the Purana says something impressive that I am going to quote again. Just as God allows himself to be enslaved by the desire of those who reach perfection, common men are enslaved by the stars. And we're going to go inside the body to see how does this work in a moment. Okay, there are two types of planets. They send two types of energy, positive and negative, malevolent and benevolent planets. So these planets distribute restriction and abundance. What does blessings and curses mean? Let's not have fear of words. If we want to study philosophy, we cannot fear words. We cannot fear the word God. We cannot fear the word evil, the word good. They are all in the dictionary, and we need to use the dictionary in order to understand reality. Okay, language is in function for our comprehension, right? It's helping us comprehend things. Okay, so planets distribute restriction and abundance. So if you are very, very strong, it's a blessing. If you are very, very weak, you don't have strength, it's a curse, right? If you are very, very clever, it's a blessing. If you have no intelligence, it's a curse, right? Of course, if you go inside the Bhakti process, you can transform curses into blessings and blessings into cursings. But let's talk. We're talking to people who never studied Vedic culture in this video. So if you talk for a basic point of view, you're going to understand that health is better than disease. Or is anyone able to deny that? So this oscillation between contraction and relaxation, excess and prohibition, positive and negative, is what makes men learn. Very elevated Vaishnavas say, actual love manifests itself in affection combined with reproach. That's why we are corrected by our spiritual masters. They say, nahi, don't think like that. Correct yourself. Nowadays people think that you're going to be learning everything easily. Is that what you experience in life? Is everything easy for you? You have to be clever and learn even when it's difficult, right? That's the way you optimize your time. Okay, according to astrology, Saturn is connected to aging, the destruction caused by time, not only to study, as we said before. Venus is connected to spring, abundance, material beauty and pleasures, but it's also the source of lust and illusion. Here we are going a little bit forward. Something can be a blessing if you look for a short period of time. Someone that is very, very beautiful in one lifetime maybe can be forced to pay evil deeds done through an excess of beauty in the next lifetime. Like the child we described before, who has like the mother in the bad position. Maybe she was a bad mother, to make it very simple with karmic law. Positive and negative. When Mars gains power under the influence of malevolent planets or uncomfortable lunar mansions, as we explained before, fire and eruptions occur. When a beneficial planet intervenes on Mars, we have a time of justice and peace, because Mars is also justice, is also the warrior. So an angry warrior sets fire to everything. A peaceful warrior reigns upon justice. So according to the chemical habitat of the planet rotating in the lunar mansions, he's going to act in a way or in another. And we can prove this statistically, scientifically. 2018, you remember probably the eruptions of the volcanoes in Hawaii. In the same week, we got a fire that destroyed the National Museum of Rio, and the fire of Paysandu, also a square in São Paulo, in Brazil. In the same week, Mars was in Aries, which is an uncomfortable place for Mars. Okay, positive and negative influence creating peace or agitation, serenity or disaster. The mind is in the world and the world is in the mind. So let's take a brief look of the relation between mind and the universe. People say commonly, you're creating the universe. Is it right? In a deep philosophical way, it could be explained. But people that are studying what we can call New Age nowadays don't really understand it. You cannot project a reality around you. You cannot once I was giving a class and someone said, no, you can. If we all sit down together and we meditate, and we can transform this house that we are in now, he said to me, into beautiful skyscraper. And I said, okay, let's try. Do you all agree that we sit down and we only leave this place until it becomes a skyscraper? Everybody laughed. Why? Because it's not the way that you have to understand this. This statement it doesn't mean that you can manipulate reality. This means that the material universe provides us with what? And this is the secret that Krishna reveals to Arjuna on chapter 13. What does Krishna say to Arjuna in chapter 13? He says, thoughts, emotions, possibilities and actions are transmitted by the stars. But he says in a different way. He says by the three gunas, right? What does he mean with that? Okay, before going to the meaning of the relation between guna and the planets, we're going to explain something that is very important. According to modern science, and this is one thing that I might believe, maybe the number can variate a little, but according to modern science, man can only see 10% of a billionth of the existing energetic manifestation around us. What does it... Let's translate this to day-by-day comprehension. Let's pretend that reality was a picture. We take a picture of this room, okay, and we look at it, and that's reality. What can we see from reality? To understand what can we see from reality, we would have to take that picture and tear it into 1,000 pieces. You take one piece, very tiny, and tear it to 1,000 pieces again, and you have 1,000,000th. And you take one piece and you tear it into 1,000 pieces again, and you have 1,000,000th. And from that piece, you divided that per 10, and that's what we see of what is going on around us. So how can someone say, I don't believe in the intervention of the energy of the stars? If you are totally blind, we are practically blind in front of reality. This is the closest thing there is to zero in terms of sight. How can you say that you need to see to believe? If at the same time science and philosophy are both explaining what? What is science explaining? The invisible, right? Or have you ever seen an atom? Do you believe in atoms? Weird, because you never saw one. Have you? They do exist, because they are written in the Puranas. It's explained, the atom is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. Okay, so from everything that exists, we only see this. The rest is invisible to our eyes. So what is going on around us is that different planets are connected to our chakras in tubes of electromagnetic fields that are giving us the illusion of reality. Our vision is limited. And for example, if you study the eye of a cat, the eye of a tiger, the eye of a snake, they can see infrared and ultraviolet, right? Why? Their pupil is bigger. So he can reach what our limitation cannot. You get the point? So this is going on, or this is going on according to the drawings of modern science, electromagnetic fields. Divided by frequency, by shape, by color, that are captured by the chakras, and they send signals to reality. So you can be a doctor because you have the blessing from the star, and everybody that looks at you gets this Wi-Fi ray, like this laser that I'm using right now, and they say, oh, doctor, let me go there. Oh, musician, let me clap. Oh, teacher, let me write down. This is what is going on. Practically, We are in a living movie, the theater of the sweet absolute. The planets work like gears, like taps. So the blessings are being poured, this is a little bit advanced for those who never heard about Vedic knowledge, by the absolute. And what does the universe does with its coverings? We know that it has like layers of protection from the spiritual reality, right? Made by matter, by folded matter and folded sound. We can see that in another moment. What is happening? It's created a cave. It's explained that the darkness of the universe is on purpose to make the universe look like a theater, to well illuminate the pastimes of Lord Krishna. You know, the moon and the stars are rotating like lamps in a theater. But what is happening before that? The layers of matter that doesn't allow us to see eternity and absolute reality creates a covering that, how can I say this in English? I'm losing the word. That doesn't allow all the blessings to hit us, to reach us. So the planets work like taps. The blessings are poured behind them in a transcendental way, and they are going to distribute some to you and not to him, a lot to her and not to she. You get the point? Is it clear or not? So the Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra says, God, the infinite, the unborn, manifests in many different ways, not only the way that he's going to describe. He has assumed the shape of 9 planets, Navagrahas, to give the living beings the results of karma. He is Janardhan, the one that rewards the past actions. Janardhan is also one of the names of the Absolute according to the Vedic literature. And what is a star doing? I remember the day I was asking this to Harinam Prabhu. I was walking in Europe by night, and the night was falling down, and Venus showed up. Just the first time that star that you see on the horizon. And I said, Gurudev, what does it mean? What is she doing there? Why it's the first star? We are trapped by what, according to Krishna? Who is the greatest enemy of man? Lust. It's the first star. Right there. And what is she doing? What is he doing? What is Shukra Acharya doing? He's emanating commands of what? Desire, passion, sexual interest. Right? And what is the time that he does that? When we stop working. For us to go back home. On sunset, in the sunset. And you say, okay, I'm going to see my friends now. You know, let's go home and hug the kids. Let's see my husband, my wife. Time for cuddling. They are transmitting our feelings. One by one. This is the 13th chapter. And this is very interesting. The first image on your right is a ultrasound of an unborn baby, and then the picture of the lines of her hand. Okay, these sounds that are transmitted in the universe get photographed, get captured by this paper skin that we have in the palm of our hands. This is an ultrasound. You have an ultrasound of your karma. The same way that you can measure the life of a baby using sound and see it. You can see, like if it was burned, on the moment of your birth, on the moment of your conception. The lines that are receiving, the five fingers are receiving from each one from a different planet. This is an antenna. Huh? So, like, this is receiving energy from Venus. What's the name of this finger in English? Thumb. The thumb is connected to Venus. The next one is connected to Jupiter. The middle one to Saturn. This one to the Sun. The ring finger to the Sun, and the small one to Mercury. And from the other sides of the antenna, you see, here you can see that there are lines, and they are like, they're not fingers, but they are like plateaus. From these plateaus also you get energy. And this is, of course, related to astrology. You have your own, you don't need to go to the astrologers, you have your own story written on your palm, on the palm of your hand, and that's why nobody has the same digital, right? That is your personal story. Okay, tropical and Vedic astrology. Tropical is the Western astrology. They use a starting point for all their calculations in the winter equinox, when the sun goes into Aries. But that position creates a problem, because there is a point called vernal point that actually moves. I said that, how? You said that the constellations don't move. I cannot tell the whole story in 1 hour, but that point moves 1 degree every 72 years. Okay? And they did all the Western's basic calculation in the 16th century. What does it mean? It means that we are already 23 degrees wrong according to the Vedic real astrological knowledge. So that's why there is a difference between if you make like your chart with the Vedic astrologist, you will find out that your sign is not what you thought. And I myself, for example, went from Capricorn, which had never described me, to Sagittarius. When I said, okay, now I got the point. You know? And it will help you even to understand your archetype in society. No? Anyway, presently the difference is at 23 degrees. A constellation has 30 degrees. We are now almost a whole sign ahead in Western calculations, and the distance keeps increasing. So soon we're going to cross more than one sign in some centuries. Okay? The Vedic calculations consider Chitra, a fixed star that is immovable in the constellation of Libra at 0 degree. This is a stable and perfect reference mark to be used in all kinds of calculations. And so we also have a relation between signs and the elements. I'm going to go fast with this. Aries, fire, Taurus, earth, Gemini, air, water for Cancer, Leo is fire again, Virgo is earth, Libra is air, etc. Let's understand one of these. What does it mean that you have a sign for an element? Let's take the example of Aries, Leos, and Sagittarius. They are signs that manifest different aspects of the element fire. Aries is the innovation, the creative impulse. It represents a pioneer spirit, the initiative. It's the ignition of the fire, the first moment. So someone who was born with the sun in Aries or with the ascendant in Aries is going to give new ideas to the society. It's useful, because who are you going to ask? What should I do? You can ask someone who has this blessing. When you meet people, you meet planetary blessings. You're meeting personifications of different amount of blessings and curses also, because we're not only made of blessings in our level of existence. Leo is the fire that nurtures, is the bonfire in the middle of the room. He's going to give heat to everybody. Usually are the people who make money. Those who are very, like selfish, they always, families together, but he's going to talk. Do you know people from Leo, right? Everybody's together, but there's only one people who is going to talk. It's our friend from Leo. Not always like this. Women from Leo are different. And also you need to check if you're really from Leo. And of course, it's not only the sun, we said it before. Huh? There are other planets some planets can dilute some energies from some people. It's not that everyone is like that. But this, Leo represents the king, and the generation and the protection of the family, the protection of the fire, the maintenance of the fire. And Sagittarius represents the sacred fire kept in temples, aspiration to the divine, the fire of transformation, coming from acquisition of knowledge and spiritual practices. Sagittarius take the fire from Leo and light up the way. He says, let's go that way. And this is the function of the sign in society. And it's not true that people saw, let's go back to that point for the sign and the archetype for a moment. It's not true that people saw a horse or a horseman in the stars. No. It's the behavior of the people who was born in that period of time that gives us the impression of a man on a horse with an arch on his hands. Because there are no animals on the stars. You see? So here we prove that the archetypes are inside reality and not in man's culture, in man's mind only. So let's go inside the body finally. 7 chakras correspond to 7 endocrine glands of the body. Isn't it true, doctor? We have the presence of a dear friend, a beautiful devotee. Probably all of you know him. I'm really glad that you came, Prabhu. Please accept my obeisance. And please confirm if I say something wrong, you throw something on my head, please. What is a chakra? We know it. It means vortex. It's a coil that picks up and distributes energies that feeds the organism by absorbing electromagnetic waves. And not only that. We can absorb energy from other people. We can absorb guna from other people also. But we're not going to talk about that now. But this is the way that, for example, we can prove that we can absorb guna from other people with the story of Ajamil, right? He looks to that couple in the Puranas and he gets lust by only relating to them through his eyes. So it's possible to manipulate other people's chakras by association, the famous word from the Vedas, because everything in nature is built through a molecule structure, geometrical molecule structure, as the constellations, as the universe is rotating around the transcendental reality, etc. So we have to know, something I didn't say, is that the glands produce hormones, right? Am I right, doctor? Yeah. Yes, he said yeah. Thank you. So the 7 chakras correspond to the 7 glands, and they produce hormones. Let's take a look of the Martian hormone, the hormone that comes from Mars. According to science, high testosterone levels bring mood swing and aggressiveness, increased muscle mass, strong libido, deep voice, irritability and anger. According to Vedic astrology, when Mars is preeminent in a chart, it brings well-developed muscles, energy, power and courage, competitiveness, vitality and virility. The negative aspects are wrath, impatience, impermanence, hurry, impulsive attitudes. I didn't put the same words not to cheat, but they have the same meanings. You can realize that, right? So what is happening? Mars is transmitting Wi-Fi signals to the gland. The gland is producing the hormone. The hormone is determining our actions. So this is the way that God controls our sensations, our thoughts, our feelings, that are equal to what we can call Maya, illusion. Even what you feel, even the good feelings that you have, according to the Bhagavad Gita, yes, you have to go beyond material goodness to see the absolute. Okay, so planets influence chakras that influence hormones. Lust comes from testosterone and estrogen. Oxytocin is connected to fidelity and altruism. This is the hormone produced by the action of Brihaspati, Guru, Jupiter, the planet of spirituality and philosophy that scientists usually don't have strong in their charts, as we saw in the first part of the class. Those with a high level of oxytocin tend to give up benefits for the sake of others. It's proven by science. Okay, and then let's go finally to the Bhagavad Gita. This is the 5th chapter, for the 14th verse. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. The modes of material nature are known as the 3 gunas: goodness, passion, and ignorance. We're going to go back to that, but we're going to say something in a parenthesis. When to consult an astrologer? At the birth of a child is an auspicious moment to offer it as a gift, to bless the child with the information of his own character in that particular lifetime. Before getting married, it's advisable to make a synastry of the couple's chart to see if they are in sympathy. Before initiating a project or making an important decision, or if you do not yet know what your Vedic horoscope looks like, I wouldn't go out of my house without it. I did a lot of them. The last one I did was the astrologers that I chose to be partner of our Vedic study group. Changed my life. I finally understood how my mind works, how my health works, how my body works, everything. How is my relationship with my father, how is my relationship with my mother, how is going to be my relations with my spiritual masters. Everything is really clear to me now, and it's a weapon that you can use to face reality. You can, for example, understand which are the blessings for you to work. When are you going to make money? When are you not going to make money, for example? This is something vital for us. An astrologist, but be careful. This is I'm saying not because I have an astrologer that I like a lot, but because it's true. An astrologer is like a lawyer or a doctor. If he or she are not well-intentioned or commits any mistake, it can be a big problem. Some of them can also trick you, give you like mantras to make you have them as referring points instead of knowledge as a referring point. If you want to have an accurate reading of your karmic situation, we have a talented and reliable astrologer in our study group. You can contact this WhatsApp number. He does readings in English and Portuguese. So let's go back to the 3 gunas, the 3 kinds of planets. What does Krishna mean is saying that the gunas are ruling upon you? And he also says, he who understands this, what is behind the gunas, does not take birth again, doesn't he? Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are sattva guna. They're ruling and distributing sattva guna. That's why they have a good relation with Vishnu and the polar star. Mercury and Venus are rajas, passion. Mars, Saturn, Rahu and Ketu are tamas, ignorance. For those who never heard of Rahu and Ketu, they are 2 invisible planets that exist in the sky, and they are also circumambulating our firmament. Someone could say, oh, I don't believe a planet that is invisible. Well, the atom is also invisible, air is also invisible. Do you believe in air? Can you breathe? Well, imagine for now that these planets are made of oxygen or air, okay, of gas. Okay, the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, finally, is totally dedicated to the 3 modes of nature. The Supreme Lord said, I shall describe to you the supreme teaching. Actually, I took out the word again, but I shouldn't have. You please forgive me. But I thought of people that never read the Bhagavad Gita, but it's important. He's saying, after showing his Mahatattva, his material form, his universal form, he's saying, I am going to give you the secret again. Pay attention. The highest of all fields of knowledge, knowing which the sages attain the ultimate perfection beyond this mundane plane. Transcending these 3 modes manifest in the body, he is liberated from the miseries of birth, death, and old age, and knows the joy of immortality. So, is it important for us to meditate on these topics or not? Let's go further. Let's go talk about Guna and Nirguna. Okay, free from material influence, we reached the goal. We saw in the beginning of the class all the stars rotating around Dhruvaloka, the polar star, right? Doesn't that look like one of those things, the charts that you throw arrows to? When Arjuna is training with the arrows, he has to reach the target, the center of a circular structure full of lines, doesn't he? The universe is controlled by three types of material manifestations: guna, ignorance, passion, and goodness. Spiritual perfection is described as reaching nirguna. Nir in Sanskrit means no, right? Zero. A level in which we do not act according to the influence of the stars. So Trinadapi Sunichana comes into mind. And Vachovegan also come into mind. Like I'm talking about some mantras that my friends and spiritual brothers here know very well. How can you control the beat of anger? It's going to beat anyway. That's what it's saying, right? It's going to be like, you're going to be punched by anger, by lust, but you're not going to react because you know that this is the Wi-Fi of the planets. And you're not going to act according to their orders anymore. Of course, there's much more to say about this. I'm not going into devotional levels because I'm a simple cultural teacher, and I'm teaching philosophy and culture into the limitation of what we can understand and what I can expose. I always say to all my students that I'm simply another student, I'm not a teacher. Anyway, when we change love with the personification of the infinite according to the Bhagavad Gita and to the Vedas, we reach this level. We reached perfection. We see the polar star. Where is the polar star? You all know, this is a little bit advanced knowledge, but it's the place in which the expansion of the Supreme Intelligence is right now, looking to our reality, right? Can you understand the rays of the star also as the organization of space and time? He is seeing everything that is important to what he wants to see. He's not at Lord Brahma's level. He doesn't want to be there. There's someone else in the machinery room, like the elevator room in the top of the building, right? He is in the perfect panoramic point of view, watching what is going on age after age. And we need to connect to him, right? So at this point, the pole star Dhruvaloka is a symbol, an expansion of transcendental and spiritual universe. You say, okay, but Dhruvaloka is not Vaikuntha. Yes, it's not Vaikuntha. It's the expansion of Vaikuntha. It's explained on Dhruva pastimes. You can go to home and read when Nanda and Sunanda talk to Dhruva. They're bringing him to Dhruvaloka, not to Vaikuntha, right? He's going to Dhruvaloka and stay with Lakshmi and Vishnu. How is it really detailed explained in the Vishnu Purana? The Vishnu Purana goes into detail. Dhruva, Lakshmi, I'm going to say something advanced now, Lakshmi falls in love with Dhruva and she considered Dhruva her son. And he lives with them right now. Lord Vishnu says, even, I think it's also in the Bhagavatam, he says, the bright shine of Dhruvaloka comes from your purity, Dhruva. He's there. At this point we reach the target and finally concentrate our actions into the center of our galactic level. But how to reach this point? How to break karma? I'm not going to go deep into this, just a brief touch, because we're getting to the close of the class. According to the most elevated Vedic manuscripts, we can break our karma by achieving Bhakti, the devotional law for the Supreme Personality of the Infinite. In our next class, we're going to do a step-by-step analysis of the scientific proof of God's existence, and I invite you to come. And to close, we're going to see a proof that Bhakti destroys karma. A famous astrologer reports that the lines in the palms of Srila Bhaktivicharya Yavara Goswami Maharaj changed completely after he spent years practicing spiritual life. I do not know what to say. The lines on your hands have changed, he witnessed, and with them your destiny. I have heard from the Vaishnavas that if someone is fixed in Krishna Bhakti, in devotion to the Supreme Intelligence, then whatever is written for him in the stars becomes ripped in pieces. I never had faith in this statement before, but now I see the evidence before my own eyes. Vishuddha Chaitanya Vani, chapter 3, page 27. And with this, I will close the lecture pronouncing a mantra, thanking all my spiritual masters, my Diksha Guru, my Shiksha Guru, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindubhya Eva Cha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Please join our page on Facebook. It's going to be on soon, not today on the actual day of this lecture, but maybe tomorrow. And so for those who are watching this video online, you can also go and see our channel and our page on Facebook. You can get in contact with us, talk to us. We are a group of students. As we said before, I'm not a teacher. I'm only someone trying to understand reality at the lotus feet of those who have this knowledge here in India. Thank you very much for your presence and for your attention. Haribol.